Hey, so my name is Troy Duffie. I'm Director of Financial Markets at the Milken Institute. My work is focused on something called inclusive capitalism. And so what that means is making sure an economy works for everyone. So everybody, we often think of capitalism as working for profit-driven people or investors or companies, but how do you create an economy that works for communities and all stakeholders, for children and parents?
Welcome to the Market Makers Podcast, where you can listen in as we interview leading asset allocators, investors, founders, policymakers, and more, who are all working together to build an inclusive economy.
Hi, Lenore.
Hey, Troy.
How are you?
Oh, I'm really good. Thanks. How are you?
Very good. I'm doing well.
Good.
I'm doing well. Why don't you tell the folks who you are and why we're doing this?
Sure. So I'm Lenore Beirne. I'm the founder and the managing partner at Bright Ventures. And I think we're doing this because we're both asking ourselves this really big question about how capitalism could look to actually support and meet the needs of humans. And I think we want to meet people who are on the front lines of creating something like that and explore that question with our listeners.
Yeah.
Who are you and why are you doing this?
Hey, so my name is Troy Duffie. I'm Director of Financial Markets at the Milken Institute. My work is focused on something called inclusive capitalism. And so what that means is making sure an economy works for everyone. So everybody, we often think of capitalism as working for profit-driven people or investors or companies, but how do you create an economy that works for communities and all stakeholders, for children and parents? And so we're super excited to do it. I think so much of it is like just talking to our friends.
Yes.
That's a lot of what the season is around the work that they're doing. That's really special to us. But also I think really delving deep into how we can change the world and using capitalism to do it.
I love that. And why are you motivated to do this? Like what happened earlier in your life that led you to these questions?
Yeah. So I start my story always in Miami. I grew up in Miami, Florida. And very interestingly, I grew up in two places. So I born and raised in North Miami Beach, but I spent most of my life in an area called Overtown. It's where my church was based. It's where my community nonprofit is based. And if you grew up in church like I did, you were at church every day. Yeah. And so a big part of my experience going from North Miami Beach to Overtown was literally seeing two different worlds. Right. North Miami Beach is a suburb of Miami, palm trees and sunshine and beautiful homes. And then Overtown was an area that wasn't that. Right. It lacked palm trees. It lacked economic development and community development. And so I'm not joking, at like 5 or 6 years old, I'm raising the question, why does North Miami Beach look one way and why does Overtown look another way? And, by the time I'm 15 or so years old, I have the language to explain federal housing is a challenge and eminent domain. I have issues around urban renewal, right? I had that language to explain like what had happened. And it's like, I want to spend my life figuring out why this takes place and why Overtown specifically was picked to build I-95 and then 195. Right. Why my community of Overtown had businesses at some point. It's literally known as the Harlem of the South. Why that community doesn't have the same kinds of businesses and clubs and vibrant churches that it once did. Right. And it's led me to this work around inclusive capitalism.
Yeah. Okay. So it makes so much sense. We have so much in common in that I also split time as a young person. I have one Black parent, one white parent, and they were not married, which meant I transferred between different neighborhoods and homes. And I think that actually really raised a ton of questions for me about differences in race, as well as differences in socioeconomic status and just what neighborhoods look and feel like. And to your point, like what kinds of businesses can exist here. Those questions continued to, I think, deepen for me as I got older and got to observe, like, I had some friends whose parents seemed to do business as a lifestyle. Like, it felt like really accessible. Capital felt accessible. Business ideology felt accessible. And then I had other friends and family members who were really interested in building entrepreneurially, but just didn't have access to the same conversations and certainly not the same resources. And so like you, I think it was around 5 or 6, I actually just bought my 7-year-old daughter the book that I remember reading back then.
What was the book?
It's called The Kid's Guide to Money. I just got obsessed. I was like, but how does money build these systems around us? Which I think is what you were asking about housing and real estate. I really wanted to understand, like, how does money work? How does it create our realities? And why? Like, that was the biggest part, right? Is like, why is it that way? And does it have to be? Exactly. Those questions, I think, like you, have really guided my whole career. I literally elevator pitched my way into an internship at...
I wish I was effective at that. I tried doing that. It was not as effective as I wanted it to be.
Okay, so I don't know if this is speaks highly of me or not, but what happened was I was working at a startup and I sat across from a Merrill Lynch private wealth office.
Okay.
And I could see it. Like we all had glass doors. That was the style at the time. And so I would watch them go in and out and I would Google private wealth. How much money do you have to have? What does that mean? Right. Okay. And ultimately just thought about why I cared about that and what I might say to one of the partners if I could catch him in the elevator. And I did and got an internship. And that helped. It was
literally the definition of elevator pitch.
Literally elevator pitch. Okay. Yeah. But I think that was a huge path open for me early in my career because it helped me connect the dots a little bit more clearly and understand that world a little better.
So tell us about Bright. What is Bright? What do you do there?
Well, okay. So funny enough, because I just told you I was working at a startup. It was an ed tech startup back then, and then interning at Merrill Lynch. Ed tech is education technology. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah. Those two themes are actually still really present in my work. So Bright Ventures has been my place to really explore these questions and build my response to them. So I had been an investor previously in a couple of different contexts in VC, but also for a foundation, philanthropically, and then realized I wanted to do my part to shift the mindsets that I thought kept capital owners and allocators out of relationship and out of connection with folks who were on the front line of innovation and had really compelling ideas for their communities. So I built Bright as that mindset shifting place. I started out as an executive coach now 10 years ago. Then 5 years after that, I realized we really can't do it alone. We need community. And so we launched Bright's Community. And then just now 3 years ago, we launched our own capital strategy, the fund at Bright Ventures. And so I'm now focusing all of my time and attention on investing in innovators.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. And how do you define innovators?
At Bright, I'm talking about pre-seed and seed stage leaders of software and technology companies in financial services and fintech, digital health, and the future of work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay. How do you spend your days now after being that young man?
So I came to the work of investing. I was always, very interested in money. And my all of my friends and my family will couch for that. It's very interesting. But I was walking down the street while I was a student at Howard University, and I kept passing this firm, right, called Village Capital. Yeah. And just the words Village Capital sounded like this is what I want to do with my life. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but and so one day I got the gumption. I went upstairs. I did not talk myself into an internship at Village Capital, but I met Ross Beirne, who is the founder, former CEO. He's left there. Hopefully, we have a conversation with him at some point. Yeah. But I got introduced to a book called The Innovation Blind Spot, and it took me through kind of the tenets of how the world works, how capital moves. And what he said is something you brought up just now around investing as a foundation. I was like, foundations invest money? I thought foundations gave away money. I thought they were, designed to do, public good. But in order to do that, they have endowments, and those endowments have to grow. And so they invest that money, and then they give away the money they make. And so I began discovering something called social impact investing. So, okay, this is what I want to do. Yeah. And so I at some point made my way to NextEra Energy as a venture capital investor, and I think discovered there that there were some things that I wanted to change system wide. Yes. And came to the Milken Institute, and so we're focused on systematic change in the asset management industry. Not just diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of who invests the money, but how that money is invested. Really thinking strategically about how do you democratize the industry, about if as a retail investor, do you get opportunity and access to private equity or private credit or alternatives? But then also strategically, how do foundations, align their strategies, right? About mission-related investments and program-related investments. And so that's some of our work as well. But, really thinking about who has access to capital, because somebody like Lenore is so much more likely to invest in somebody who looks like Lenore than somebody who doesn't. So it's a very important thing that we're focused on, and I love the work.
Me too. Yeah. And I love doing it with you. Thanks for the opportunity to do this together.
Absolutely. So I'm excited about the podcast. I think what's special about it is we're going to get a chance to explore all of these conversations, not just with people who are investors like ourselves, but with people who are thinking about this from a research perspective and from a policy perspective, some elected officials. Super excited about it.
Me too.
I'm just excited to dive in.
Wonderful. Me too.
Do you know someone who's interested in inclusive capitalism? Please share our podcast with them.